So AI slop is the term that we commonly use to refer to the silly cats and dogs videos that we see all over the internet. But now that term does include text that is generated typically with tools like ChatGPT. This doesn't have to be academic text. You see this all over LinkedIn. You see this all over email. It's really obvious. There are very, very clear signs that show that writing is produced by generative AI and it's basically AI slop. The problem is a lot of students trust AI slop over their own thinking, their own writing, and of course, their own voice. And it's very easy to spot text that is AI slop. And hopefully, by the end of this video, you'll be able to see that clearly. And that should help you to trust your own thinking and voice over AI slop, no matter how underdeveloped you feel it is. So, one of the first signs that is clear when looking at a text that shows that it is AI slop is that it sounds sophisticated but adds nothing. And the problem is that an academic paper has to add something. There is a very clear distinction between something that is presented in a sophisticated way. So, for example, it uses a sophisticated language, the grammar is accurate, the paragraphs are nicely formulated, but there's nothing added there in terms of an argument, in terms of something new, in terms of a contribution. There just is nothing. Another thing is that every sentence sounds equally important and it is very mechanical. And when you look at human-led writing, that is just not, it's almost impossible to do because that's not how we think, that's not how we speak, and that's definitely not how we write. We have main ideas that are bold, and then we have sub ideas and sub thoughts that kind of connect to the bigger ideas and support it, and you can follow a train of thought. But AI doesn't quite embody that. You can see that every sentence is made to sound equally important in a very artificial way because obviously, it's a machine. Whereas with a human thought, it's organic, it's messy, but it's real. And you can see where the weight is in different thoughts and ideas, and it's just naturally unbalanced, which is a good thing. Another clear sign is that it summarizes instead of demonstrating thinking, which again is a problem because when work is presented as a summary of the reading or whatever, it doesn't show an advanced level of thought, which is really important. Students often ask me, how can I get the top marks? And I will always say that you need to move beyond describing and summarizing into showing your own interpretation, your analysis, your evaluative thinking, of course, your critical thinking. But where the text is just summarized, it doesn't show your understanding of the literature. It doesn't show a synthesis of the ideas that you've read and understood. And that's where you can clearly see that this is lacking in any kind of depth from an assessor point of view, not just a reader. You don't want to read something that tells you about the topic that you can read in a textbook, in a journal article, or even worse, in lecture notes. That's just a regurgitation of what you've taught students. So it's really important that that level of advanced thinking from a human perspective is demonstrated. And that's just something that you won't get in its full depth with an AI produced piece of text. And so, for example, you'll see with AI slop, you'll see something very mechanical and balanced. Smith argues X, Jones argues Y. But with real human-led writing, you'll be discussing things and presenting the so what. Where do the scholars in the literature clash, what follows, and this is where you're developing your own thinking and your own evaluation and your critique, and it really does show. Another clear sign is that AI slop substitutes big words for precision. And it does this to perhaps mask the emptiness that, it just doesn't go beyond the surface in terms of real depth. So you'll see a lot of words that don't need to be there, but are there just to make the writing sound impressive. And, one of the words that is very clear to me that writing is AI slop is the word quietly, because quietly you'll see it peppered all over the paper, not doing anything, not adding any value, and not saying anything particular. Now, I must put a disclaimer here. I've put these words as red flags, but it doesn't mean that if somebody uses some of these words, that their writing is produced by AI or is AI slop. I personally, I use the word multifaceted both in when I'm speaking and writing. I also like the word crucial when I want a synonym for important. So, it's something that you do have to sort of take a view on. Um, and, like I said, not everyone who uses these words is producing AI slop. However, if it just appears all together in one paragraph or in a set of paragraphs, quite, mechanically, and, you can almost count the number per paragraph in a, very mechanical fashion, then yes, it does strongly suggest that this is AI slop. Another clear sign is the AI slop writing avoids taking a position, which again, this isn't natural to human thought. Um, yes, it is important to try and be balanced to a certain extent, but you do need to take a position if you are making a clear argument. So for example, everything typically tends to be hedged. If you don't know what hedging is when you use words such as could or might or may to soften a claim. Now, this is obviously important. It's important for people to hedge or use hedging when they are writing really strong claims. So, for example, if somebody was to say, all girls in Africa struggle to access quality education, you see, that's a generalization that is quite strong. And even though you may have data that shows that, it's better to soften that claim. So you could say something else, like it could be argued that girls in sub-Saharan Africa struggle to access quality education. Do you see how you softened a claim? However, even though hedging is useful and it is necessary in many cases, we do need to be bold in certain claims. When making certain arguments and when taking a position in particular, you do need to be bold. And sometimes you don't need hedging. Sometimes you just need to say something as it is. But again, AI slop tends to just hedge everything. And hence it avoids taking a position and it avoids asserting claims. And like I said, you do need to do that if you're going to, make a clear argument or reach a conclusion. You do have to be bold in your claims. Another thing is that there is usually very weak cohesion or basic signposting. Now, I am someone, again, I like to use furthermore, moreover, in addition. So just because you see this, it doesn't mean automatically that the text is produced by AI. However, when I say that the cohesion, so cohesion is the way that you link your ideas, the way you link your sentences, and signposting is the way that you guide the reader through the text, making it easier for them of what to expect and signal where you are within your discussion. AI isn't great, particularly ChatGPT. It's not great at that cohesion in sort of gluing ideas together. And the way I would describe it is almost like when you are in a passenger seat and somebody's driving and they go round the corner really fast without slowing down, and you kind of like feel that sharpness in the turn, compared to if somebody was to approach um, a corner really gently braking and then slowly turning either left or right. You can clearly feel um, how much more comfortable that is. You are not scared and you kind of expect that, when you turn, you're going to see, you've turned into a new corner as opposed to just being rushed and sharply turned into a corner. I think that's, for me, that's how I would describe um, the lack of cohesion or basic signposting. It doesn't do enough to guide the reader through the text. And as I said, using words like furthermore or moreover or in addition doesn't automatically mean that this is AI slop. But if that's the only cohesion that the text can muster, or that's the only signposting language that the text has, then it is a strong it's strong evidence that the text is AI slop. And lastly, if we kind of pull everything together, because none of these points are completely independent, they all interlink. By the end of the text, you'll find that it only has addressed the topic at surface level, which really does show AI slop. You've used all this sophisticated language. You've, balanced out everything so it's, so mechanical. But what exactly is the conclusion? What is the takeaway? Because, as I said, a good paper has to make a contribution. It has to bring a new idea. It needs to tell you something that perhaps you didn't know at the start. And one thing that AI Slop just doesn't do is it doesn't add anything. It's almost you've read the paper and you feel that you've wasted your time. You've wasted your time because you didn't really, there's nothing to take away. There's no clear conclusion because there was no clear argument. There was no clear discussion. There weren't any clear, clearly supported points that were developed and discussed. Therefore, the conclusion falls flat and nothing's been achieved, except for just, a word salad of vocabulary that is seemingly sophisticated but lacks any substance. So, um, what you can do to avoid AI slot manifesting in your work is something really straightforward. It's a three stage. It's just three stages for you to just mentally guide yourself through. So the first thing is to ask yourself, is this generally my thinking? And this is really important because for me, I want to share my thoughts. I want my voice to be heard. And I don't want AI to strip that from me. I do not want to pass off work that is AI slop that lacks my voice. My ideas are worthy of being heard and being shared. And even though they may be imperfect, they're still my ideas. Have you challenged, not just accepted AI output? And this is really important here because this it makes you accountable. It really moves you from just being a passive participant in your learning to an active agent. And this is important because you do have a brain, you do have thoughts. Like I said, they may be messy, they may be underdeveloped. That's fine. The process of writing is exactly that. It's a process where you start with uncertainty and you build upon that, you refine it, and you end up with something at the end rather than just feeding your AI a prompt and then coming out with something that lacks any kind of thought from you or any kind of intellectual reasoning. does this make an argument not just sound academic? Because there is a difference between sounding academic and genuinely making an argument. And again, this is something that you are capable of. You have a brain, but you do have to trust that your brain is capable of producing arguments that stand over AI slop. And you'll find that in human-led writing, you naturally make a claim. Just listen to yourself when you speak. You have a purpose, you have something to say. So when you're writing, you should also make sure that you make claims. And when you make those claims, you need to support it with evidence. And then that's where you bring in and you demonstrate the understanding of the literature. You select which type of sources to support what you're saying. Because AI again is very good at putting citations, nicely, neatly everywhere, but it's not authentic because it doesn't actually filter for you the way that you would filter with the text that you resonate with the literature that speaks to you and supports your own argument. The AI can't do that. So it's just going to pepper again, it's going to pepper the paragraph, the paper with all these citations, but it's very clear to see that this is AI slop. It isn't your own human-led evidence and writing. And of course, in that case, your own writing, no matter how messy and underdeveloped you feel it is organic, it is the authentic version of your thoughts that you can develop and you can refine. When we speak about surface level stuff not being deep enough, that is because you are the human. You are the one with the lived experience. You are the one with the cognitive ability for advanced thinking. And you have to remember as well, it is this type of messy, unrefined, organic thought from human thinking that AI models, large language models, are trained on. So you have this at your disposal. You've got your brain and you've got your brain to work with you. So even if you are using AI, you need to make sure that your brain doesn't become redundant in it, that your brain is the lead in the engagement that you have with AI. I hope that helps. I do have an entire collection on ethical and responsible use for AI writing. The link is in the description bar. You can have a look at that along with the tools that will guide you towards trusting and ensuring that it's your own voice that is driving your writing and you do not rely on any generative AI to produce AI slop for you.